Hello, welcome to Chamber Live, the latest edition of our Health and Safety Forum today, brought to you by the East Lancashire Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by Intersolia. The views expressed in this webinar don't necessarily represent the views of the East Lancashire Chamber of Commerce and are all correct or believed to be correct at the time of recording, which is the 7th of October 2020. Today we're focusing on home working, the perils and pitfalls and what employers should be thinking about as more of us incorporate home working into our new routines. First of all though, as ever at the Chamber, we're very grateful to our sponsors for supporting our events. Intersolia have been solid supporters of this group for some time now. They provide customised solutions for managing chemical health and safety in an environmentally friendly way. They've been doing it since 1999. They operate in Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Serbia and in the UK, and representing them today is Tim O'Donnell, over 20 years HSE management experience spanning numerous industries including construction, refurbishment, manufacturing, distribution and facilities management. As a health and safety professional, he spent several years as a customer of Intersolia and a user of their systems before joining the team and becoming CEO of Intersolia UK. Tim, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and welcome to you all. We at Intersolia are thrilled to be able to sponsor the East Lancs Health and Safety Forum. We have been doing so for many months now, back into last year when things were normal. Many of you may have heard my introduction. As you have heard, we are specialists in chemical safety effectively. We have a very large team of consultants based across Europe who can help you with all aspects of chemical safety, including our web-based tool, which is known as iChemistry. So those that haven't got a cost management system in place, we can offer you a very cost-effective cost management system. And if you're interested, please let us know at the end of the presentation. And we do, of course, have contact details coming up. But what I would like to very quickly talk to you about this morning is REACH. It's a massive headache, and we at Intersolia have foreseen some of the changes, a few of which I'm going to share with you now. Of course, this isn't all of the recommendations that we can come up with, because there's a whole host of them, but some that you may be wanting to think about first and foremost. And that is, of course, come the end of this year when things will have changed. We expect to have a UK REACH system. We don't know yet what that is. And we recommend that if you have any data stored within the EU IT systems, such as chemical registrations, etc., you may want to think about taking them back into your own in-house systems, just in case the EU decide that as non-EU members, they throw their teddies out the cot and say that we can no longer access an EU database. So if you've got systems or information in EU systems, I would advise you to remove them and certainly keep access to them. Any local businesses which have sister organisations or parent companies within the EU, you may want to explore the opportunity of perhaps sharing any registrations that they have with you and you have with them, as that will mitigate any risks that you may have. Next slide, please, Simon. If you don't have an organisation within the EU that is a sister organisation, etc., you may want to consider using an only representative known as ORs, who are already in existence within the EU for non-EU manufacturers who are playing their trade within the EU market. Of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, Intersolia has a very large team of consultants who are expert in all aspects of REACH and will be able to take the, or certainly remove a considerable headache that you may have with regards to REACH requirements at the end of this year, beginning of next. So using a consultancy or only representative would probably be cost effective if you have up to about 10 products registered within ECHA. If you don't, then, or if you have more than that, then one of the options would be to be able to set up your own entity within the EU, but you can explore that at a later date. Once again, this is just a little taster about what we can offer and what we can provide you with regards to taking away that headache of reach at the end of this year. Next slide, please, Simon. If you want any further information or advice, it's available to you. And as Simon said, this forum is going to be recorded, so you will have access to it. That's it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Tim. I'll kill the screen share because we're going to circulate those slides as part of the presentation. So you'll get those contact details, anyone who's registered, therefore everyone who's on the call. Has anyone got any questions for Tim? Anything that's been raised that you want to clarify?
Yes, Dean?
Tim, is the registration or the REACH regulations, does it only apply to those who are actually creating substances and chemicals?
No, it doesn't. It can also include all companies that want to import chemicals into from outside the EU into the EU economic area. So if, for example, I'm at an organization at the moment that imports from America and then has customers in Europe, so that would apply.
Brilliant, okay.
Thanks, Dean. Any other questions? Okay, great. No, thank you, Tim, and thank you again to Intersolia for being our sponsor. My main issue, Tim, this morning is an empty whiteboard. Whenever I see an empty whiteboard, you've got one behind you, I feel like I want to sort of draw something on it. So yeah, maybe that can be your challenge between now and 11:30.
Yeah, it'll be a can of beer, I reckon.
That sounds like a good call. A good call. Right. Well, thank you, Tim. And again, we'll put Tim's contact details in the follow-up email that Debbie will send around later on today. Now, on to our next speaker then. Most of us have done a lot more of it this year. We're being encouraged to do it if we can. And even in a post-COVID world, it looks like we're going to carry on doing it. I am, of course, talking about home working. There are clear benefits to employee and employer with working from home, but there are also risks and pitfalls that businesses need to be aware of and safeguard against. Dean, who's going to be our speaker, Dean Williams, has been the owner of Unicorn Solutions Limited since 2015. He's proud to be described by his clients as refreshing, practical, and a breath of fresh air. By using tried and tested techniques and skills, he's helping businesses across the Northwest to make cultural changes. And this means that more businesses are better equipped to deal with the mental and physical aspects of work. I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating 45 minutes. And I'll hand over now to you, Dean.
Thank you very much, Simon, and good morning to everybody that has taken the time out of your busy working day to join me to share what is information that probably some of us know bits about, probably got some burning questions as to what else we need to cover and other things on how to deal with certain situations when they arise. So as Simon said, for the last 6 months, maybe a pinch more, a lot of us have had to adjust to a new working environment. And that working environment is probably familiar to most of us as it is our home. Some of us are lucky enough to have an office to work from. Some of us have now adapted the kitchen table to become our new office, or maybe we're even sat with a laptop tray on the settee in the comfort of your own home and having the dog sat on the back of the sofa, whatever it may be. Your home potentially now is your new working environment. So we looked at this as potentially a lone working issue. And in terms of lone working, there's many different factors that how people define lone working. For me, lone working is always about not being in an environment where somebody can raise an alarm should anything happen to you. My previous experience has been with a company that did a lot of work for the military and also did a lot of work with Sky. And Sky had an interpretation that every single engineer that was operating for them was potentially lone working. And we challenge this to say that our engineers will never be alone working in anybody's house because the resident of that house will be with them. So in that fact that should anything happen, there should be somebody there who can call emergency services if that individual is ever incapacitated. So now we've potentially got a scenario due to the restrictions from COVID and the lockdowns and furloughing from work as well. We've now got potential for lone working, but despite working from home, you may be alone. And if you did have any health conditions or you fell, although it's in your own home, who's around you to raise the alarm? So this might be just perfectly normal of a weekend if you're in the house on your own on a Sunday or a Saturday, and your partner may go out shopping or go and playing golf, whatever we're allowed to do right now. So there's still potential for you to have an accident and be left alone with nobody around you to raise the alarm. But now is the more of an impact from being in your home during these restrictions that have been placed upon us. So potentially we are going to be lone working, which is why the regular touch points from colleagues, emails, whether it's WhatsApp groups or different mediums that we have of sharing information, the regular contact is a good thing because we need to make sure that people are well enough when they're either at home, but they're at home working. So how often do you work alone? And certainly what sort of hours are you working as well? But there's been a lot prior to COVID about introducing more flexible working, and this is probably more of a HR slant, but companies have been encouraged to accept other people's requirements to either come to work later or earlier and leave earlier or later. This flexible working, so the time of what you work, 8 hours can start at 6 in the morning and finish at 2 in the afternoon, or we can arrive at 10 o'clock and leave at 6. Either way, those hours of working were always a constantly moving target. However, nowadays, we're potentially doing an hour in the morning, taking the kids to school, having another couple of hours, having some lunch, taking a dog out. So maybe that your 8 hours are actually spread across a 12-hour day. And you've got to be fine with that as well. And different people have different requirements. So when you are working from home, you might not necessarily be always in a fixed position, and it's encouraged that you don't stay in a fixed position. Being at home, working from home is really no different to being in an office. You would still be encouraged to get up and leave your seat, relax your eyes against something that's totally different, go out and have a break, have a cup of tea, get away from your screen because it's healthy to do so. So some of the other hazards that we've got from working from home, as well as being alone, will include how we set up our infrastructure, because we have now currently classed as temporary working from home. So in the eyes of the law, we're not actually legally bound to conduct a display screen equipment assessment because it's temporary work. But now this temporary is becoming the new norm for some companies, and some businesses are taking an opportunity to potentially close their offices, realizing that they can cut some of their overheads and they can still be productive having everybody work from home on a network. Then we're starting to cause people to say that that now is your fixed working environment. Then we need to legally comply with the regulations to make sure people are doing their assessments for their workstations. So there are things that we have to do, but there's other things that we could do as well. So when we say have to do, most people in business will say we do what is legally required and don't necessarily go beyond that to make sure that people are protected. Or if they're given the options to say you could do this, they're like, do I have to, or is it an option? So we're going to cover today some options of what we could do. And by the way, when we say we could do, it's a good idea to do it as well. So there are added benefits, which initially may not be recognizable short term, but are definitely beneficial long term. Okay, Simon's created a poll for us. So we're going to put that live, if that's a poll at all possible for you to do, Simon. So option on there, we'll just give you a few seconds to answer that. I think 19 of the 21 in. I might have already sent 2 people to sleep, Simon. Okay. I'm going to give it the remaining 15 seconds just in case people are undecided as to what to do. But yes, from working from home, what elements are you concerned the most about? Currently, we've got all 21 in. Fantastic. So 10% of you are worried about the display screen equipment assessment. 43% of us, the provision of that equipment that probably supports that display screen equipment assessment. 33% of you feeling disengaged, and 14% of you dealing with the anxiety and the stress as a result. Okay. So I'm just going to make a note of those stats there actually, because this is interesting. And again, adding more people, you'll see the figures that may just end as well or differ slightly from one audience to another. Okay, I'm going to end that there just at that point. Thank you very much for your participation. Okay, so in terms of what we are looking at from display screen equipment, it is one of the issues that when we are sat in an office, not many people think there are health and safety issues in an office. But we're working with electrical products, which can become warm if we're looking at chargers for laptops, chargers for phones. These can present their own hazards by starting fires. Laptops that are kept on cushions and pillows and beds and phones that get warm and can combust. Unlikely, but not impossible. From our display screen equipment assessment that is usually done in the workplace, there's nothing really stopping us from picking up those same templates and taking them into our home environment. So we will be looking at the things such as the setup of your chair and the screen and the desk, and making sure that your ergonomics, and at this point when we talk about ergonomics and sitting in your chair correctly, the physios in the room like Clive will be probably watching the screen now for everybody adjusting and sitting up straight and putting your shoulders back and keeping the base of your back into the base of the chair. This is a good practice. However, our natural attitudes and postures overtake and we become slumped again. So it is perfectly normal that when we see people around an office, we see this natural curvature of the spine being compromised by our postures. And with the vertebrae that we've got in the spine, they are separated by the discs that are in there. And those discs are acting like shock absorbers in between your vertebrae. Not necessarily that from sitting at your desk for 10 minutes will your back go, as we call it. But when you have a prolapsed disc, as many physios will be able to tell us, that soon sorts out the way that you're going to sit in the future. So as much as we can encourage people to sit in the correct way, what we should be doing is listening to what they need to encourage them to sit in the correct way. So if we give people some people have sat in their offices at home on an exercise yoga ball, because it says it encourages them to sit more upright. That's great. It's not for everybody. So some people are thinking, if you're telling me now I've got to sit on a yoga ball for the rest of the day, I'm out. It's not the case. People are different in all different walks of life, and you will find what is normal for you. The display screen equipment regulations are considering touch points of what you need to look at. The top part of your spine, as you see with this image that's on your screen now, the top part of the spine is compromised because we're either leaning forward, as we do to get close towards our screen, or we end up stooping down towards our screen and looking down on the screen. The minute you take your screen and elevate it, now for some of you this may mean getting a load of books and putting them on your kitchen table, if that is your chosen office space, cookery books, yellow pages, if they still exist, but then you elevate your screen. Then it's now difficult from a laptop point of view to operate your keyboard. So we've got to separate your keyboard from your screen. By elevating your screen, your eyes are going from a low point and now pitching further up, because we're taking your attention to a higher level. That's going to elongate that top part of your spine. So all these added extras from getting a desk riser for your laptop, are beneficial not just to keep your laptop cool and get airflow there, but actually elevate the screen to make sure that you're pitching that screen height at a more desirable level, which is more in line with the requirements of the DSE regs. So we've got to look at your chair. You may be able to work from your kitchen chair or just your dining room chair, but after a period of time, you can become very uncomfortable. You can start developing lower limb disorders, sciatica can creep in, and then people start to ache and cause all sorts of muscle spasms throughout the course of just doing what they normally would do at home. So whether it's just going out and walking the dog, but you start to feel like you're cramping up and your limbs will start to ache more considerably for longer. So this is where we need to consider a different chair. If you've got a really good chair at your office and you miss that chair, ask your business owners or your managers if you can go and commandeer your chair for working at home. You don't necessarily need to go and buy a new chair, not just a personal purchase or a business purchase, but try and utilize what you've already got that you're used to and they're comfortable with. And also, if it's a separate keyboard, bring your keyboard from the office as well. Bring your mouse from the office. Anything that means that you can conduct your work in as much as a normal scenario as possible, reutilize it. There are too many opportunities at this stage for every potential employee to go out there and say, and now I want a desk for my spare bedroom, I'm going to get a new chair, I'm going to get a new PC. It's not really for that. This is to make sure that people can continue to be as comfortable as possible from home. So the business still has to provide that equipment. However, this isn't there to be abused. It's to help people be able to adapt, not just create a whole new inventory of equipment that IT need to log as assets. The equipment can be purchased by the employer, but it should really be done in consideration of what the individual's needs are, which is, for me, has always been frustrating in the past, that we walk into an office and you have 30 desks all look the same and 30 chairs all look the same, expecting all of us to be the same, and we're not. So equipment has to be adaptable, a chair has to be adjustable in its lumbar support, the height adjustment, the actual rake of the chair as well. You don't get that from a dining room chair. So you're not really supposed to sit there for prolonged amounts of time without being able to adapt and adjust to make you more comfortable. It's a difficult time for us all at the minute, so the more comfortable you can be, the better. If you're comfortable on your sofa, great, but then you're still going to have issues where the parts of your spine are going to be compromised because your spine will not be as ergonomically safe as possible. We talk about keeping a back straight, but your back in theory is never straight anyway, just for the four natural curves of the spine. So let's try and protect that, because it's your health and your safety that we're still compelled and have a duty of care to look after. So despite giving you all of the equipment, people still may sit on a chair incorrectly. And I still envy some of the youngsters nowadays that can still sit on a chair cross-legged, and they do it because they can, but this isn't the way it was supposed to be done. And when we do give people equipment to utilize for work, we're expecting them to use it in the way it was designed. So we always used to say to children in a classroom, it's got 4 legs, use them. It's a chair with 5 wheels on, please respect it and sit on it because it's your health that I'm concerned about. This doesn't mean that they're going to actually follow your instruction. This might be like just talking to your children. We can give them all the advice, all the pointers. They can accept the equipment as being suitable and sufficient for their work, but we're still expecting them to use it in the way it was designed. You can only monitor that over the months when you need to review periodically. I would say after a month or so to make sure that people's equipment is still suitable for them. When you do get new equipment, you tend to find that people will say, I'm suffering from more pains now. They're probably doing things properly now, where they're changing from their bad habits. So please just monitor it and touch base with the members of staff just to make sure that they're happy with everything and there's nothing more that we need to consider. But this could be from footrests, from wrist supports, separate mouse and keyboards. There is a checklist that is on the HSE website, which you can download the pro forma, which will talk you through what you need to do. But share it with your employees. It's for them to review what they've got. and every assessment will be different because the employee is different themselves. Okay, so once we get through the equipment and we've supplied it, we get the individual to sign for it, they accept it, they put it up in their workplace, and then we can move on to the next bit. Now, one of the problems that we've got with working from home and being away from a normal working environment is the engagement, the lack of engagement. Now, there's a comment that will always be said that is there's only one thing worse than poor communication, and that is no communication. So the lack of engagement, if you have previously been in a busy office with 20, 30 colleagues, and now your friends and colleagues are no longer around you, that is massively different and can have an impact on us to stop the camaraderie. We feel a lot more isolated. We can feel more vulnerable. For some people, they said, thank God for that. I've got some peace and quiet to be able to do my work. But everybody's different. So we do still need to keep communicating with people. The problem is that when communication isn't established and is kept as regular, a number of things start to happen, which is the HSE now are recognizing one of the biggest factors now from working from home during lockdown and COVID and working from home is that anxiety, fatigue, the stress and the depression are creeping in more. And if we trace it back, we can see that a lot of this has come on board from the lack of communication. And lack of communication can create suspicion. What's happening? Why am I not hearing anything? Am I no longer important? And at that point, when we start hearing about on the news the negative messages about companies are having to make redundancies, when you're not around people that can reassure you that things are correct, that are relevant to the business and that are accurate at that time, that negative seed starts to sow, and we can get very paranoid about what is going to be happening in the future, not just to the business, but to us as well. So ironically, when redundancy is ever mentioned, whether it's your own company or somebody else's company, we all start to get a little bit paranoid. And from the paranoia then creates a lot of self-interest, because if there's 5 jobs going and there's only 10 of us, I'm now fighting against you for that job. So we become very interested in looking after ourselves, and this is every man for himself at this stage. It's not healthy. We were put on this planet to help each other and to help each other be safe and survive. Self-interest just creates stress. And everybody which normally would have been a colleague and a friend is now the enemy as we're trying to fight for one job. But this again can be systematic from poor communication or no communication. We can become very cynical of the management, and well, you'd never expect any sort of message, would you, of communication or support during this. We're at home. Management think we're just taking a time, not doing any work. We're logging on in the morning, not doing any work. And some people do have that impression of their employees that, well, they're just logging on. It doesn't mean they're doing work, but maybe that's because we're just not communicating. Or if we do have something to communicate, we don't know how to. And it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. The worst case you can get to is the feeling then we can no longer trust each other. The employees no longer trust the owners of the business or the people in the business, and they don't trust the staff. Then we're just butting heads. And at that point, it's not healthy either for the business or the individual, because this is where we start to get the onset of stress, anxiety, and depression. So I would encourage everybody that it is a good time to communicate, but got to find out the right way of how people want to be communicated with. So there are many different mediums. It may be a phone call, it may be a Zoom call like we've got today. It may also be a WhatsApp group for a collective few of you. If you're a team within a business, it may be that your team have a WhatsApp group. These are still methods of communication. Email is vastly being overlooked as a preferred method, but some people prefer it. But the communication is key. Okay. As a result of these sorts of effects of lack of communication, not saying that this always happens, but it can and has been recently over the last few months, causing a lot more people to either self-harm or thinking more in terms of their their use to their colleagues or to their firm. And the impacts can be, unfortunately, stress, anxiety, and depression, ironically spells sad. So when people do phone up and say, how are you getting on? Even though they may say, I'm fine, it's not always the case. And we're not expecting you to probe deeper, but don't always take the face value as to saying, well, I phoned them up on Tuesday, they said they were fine. And then 2 days later, we're having an inquest as to somebody has sadly either injured themselves or potentially put their life and other lives at risk as a result. So some of you will have a sense of how your colleagues normally perform and a sense of what makes them tick. And when they're not on their game by their own standards, you'll sense it. But it's that point then we can reach out and just say to them, we're here for you, as much as somebody to the left and to the right of them will be there for you. So the different causes for these effects can include that lack of communication, which we've previously spoken about. Not enough work can cause stress, because if people are feeling as though I'm sat at home, I've done all my work, if I'm not producing any work, they may feel as though my job really isn't that much of a need, which then creates more of the stress and the anxiety. Alternatively, some people are feeling as though it's a good opportunity to give them more work. Well, you're at home, you're logging on at 7, you can do this whenever you want, but here's, while you're busy, I'll give you more work. So organisational hazards have always been too much work or not enough work. It's not just because of lockdown and working from home that this has been a health and safety hazard. This has always been an organisational hazard that is recognised by the HSE. So stress from too much work or not enough work is possible. Poor equipment that we are given to do our work. So this may be a laptop that you can boot up in the morning and you can go away, walk the dog, come back, make your breakfast, have a cup of coffee, have a shower, and it's still loading up by the time you get to your desk. That equipment needs to be suitable for you to be able to do your job. If you're given 8 hours work a day, it's no good if it takes your laptop 3 hours to load up, or it keeps on having backups and failures. We still need to make sure that that equipment is suitable and sufficient for you to work from. So some poor equipment can cause hazards, and especially with poor chairs or poor ergonomics within your chairs and your desks. Overreaching for a telephone. Now, this might not necessarily be the case for some of you now that we're all working from mobile phones, but when people are in an office with a desk phone, if their mouse is on the right-hand side because they're right-handed, don't have the phone on the right-hand side, because inevitably you'll get to the point where that happens with the phone propped under the ear, and while you're on your keyboard, that is causing you upper limb disorders from your shoulder, your neck, and your spine. So please sort out the ergonomics on your desks. It's good to have things put to the left-hand side, like a phone, and having the mouse on the right-hand side. It's just changing the way that we've done things. But change can be good. Change is healthy. Okay, the final bit, job security and not knowing what potentially is around the corner. So again, these are some of the factors that are affecting people's health, causing them to have sleepless nights, the money issues, the furlough program. We talk about the different C word and the F word in health and safety, the fines and compensation, but the last 6 months has been furlough and COVID. Furlough program was brilliant. Brilliant to allow people to stay safe at home, 80% of the wage. For some people, they were having it topped up to the full 100%, and we had the fantastic weather outside as well. Most people were healthy, frustrated, but healthy. But as those furlough programs come to an end and people are going back to work, it may be a financial pinch on the business where you may have to make people redundant. And this can cause all sorts of insecurities for individuals as well as departments. So how your mental health is affected is going to be a big factor, but you can help other people and they will help you in return. So please define what your regular communication stream looks like and make it a regular calendar entry. So if you do have a team meeting on a Monday at 9:30, continue to do it. We're just doing everything that we've always done. It's just different. So when we talk about unprecedented, many people don't like that word because we've been through these sort of things before, just not in the last 10 years. So we're now dealing with things, but we've got so much more technology around us to support us. In balance, it's good. Too much technology can be bad. So having regular meetings over the phone, on Zoom, should maintain them as much as possible. Define what your methods of communication are going to be, whether it is a preferred method to have that weekly call or a Zoom call. Some people don't like to see themselves on camera on a Zoom meeting, and that's fine, it's perfectly normal. Some people prefer to have the phone call. Some people would just rather receive emails. Either way, everyone will have a preference. You just need to find out what that is. Listening to employees or even listening to managers. Now, as much as we've spoke about looking after your team, that seems like an instruction that's coming from the top management and giving it and searching out for your employees and making sure you're making those touch points with your team. This conversation can go the other way as well. So you can take the opportunity to put a call into your manager or your boss to see if they are okay. They're human beings as well. So as much as we are in a business to look after people who we are custody over during their working hours, the care can also go back the other way as well. So be aware of reaching out to the people that have got tough jobs as well, looking after a team and making sure they can stay inspired and motivated to want to be able to do their work and fulfill everything that they need to do. Please take the time to define work packages. Things are different from working from home, but it is just purely different. Giving access to people to what they need in terms of their network, their documents and their systems. Be quite prescriptive as to what you want them to achieve. You don't want to set somebody up to fail, which may fail the business if they don't know how to gain access to something, how to do it, or are given unrealistic targets. And this is where all the smart targeting comes in. If we give people too much, it can affect their health. If we give them too little, it can affect their health. And this is there's a sweet spot. Everything that you do may affect your team and your business. Everything you don't do may affect your team and your business. So there is a touch point, there's a sweet spot, but balance is the key. Socializing amongst your team. So I'm not saying that you should just log on every day and have a laugh and a joke and have a quiz and wear funny hats. You can still have fun at work. And sometimes now that we're working from home, there's a lot of things going on around us and we don't know whether we're coming or going, but it's still good to engage fun. And at times I've seen different people in different businesses saying, right, this way we're going to have a themed presentation when we share our weekly updates with each other. And it may be that you're wearing a silly shirt, Hawaiian shirts, or you're wearing a hat. It's just different things, putting a different background up on your screen. It's fun, and fun shouldn't be taking out the fundamentals when we're looking at working from home and continuing to do what we've always done. As I mentioned just a short time ago, interacting doesn't have to be a one-way street going from the top down, the management structure. It can go the other way. So we are still human beings as business owners, and we still want people to ask us how we're doing as well. So the spoken word over a telephone call is appreciated and also never forgotten. So people in management are also vulnerable like we can be at home as well, and may also be at risk from their jobs as well if there is any potential risk to the business during these uncertain times of what the future holds. But what we do know is that nobody should be left behind. We are all colleagues, we are all human beings, we are all there to look after each other and to make sure that when we are working from home, we still have that duty of care to fulfill our legal obligations. Everybody is different, and if you're intrigued as to how people do work, I've recently read a book called Surrounded by Idiots, a genius book which covers all the different theories of how people operate and their mindsets. If you do have any spare time, I'd encourage you to read it. You will learn a lot more about how people behave, and that is the key at the moment. The rules that kind of apply to everybody. How you adapt them to individuals has to be different because everybody is different. Whether it's the posture, their equipment needs, their interaction, whether they want the peace and quiet or they want to be around their colleagues, we just got to understand people more. If we don't understand people, we don't understand business. And that is going to be the key fundamentals as to how we can get people to work safely at home, making sure that we can maintain a healthy mindset while they are at home. This is still business. We are still producing and we are still developing, but we just need to make sure that nobody gets left behind and we can all come out the other end as a success story for East Lancashire, and changing the way that we've always done it. These software systems will be around us for a long time to come, but keeping them in balance. I don't think they will always fully replace the face-to-face, in-person interactions, but it can certainly be used in balance. And for me, I think that is everything so far. Thank you, everybody, so far for listening. It's now over to you if you've got any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dean. Now, anyone who's ever been on a webinar with Dean is a host's dream, because I can always guarantee that Dean will always come in with a question. So I would expect you to return the favour, please. Any questions for Dean? I'm going to kill your screen share if that's all right, Dean, just so that we can see the wall of people, or I can see the wall. I'll check my posture and then see who's got any questions. Don't be shy. Una.
Yeah, this might throw the cat amongst the pigeons somewhat, but I'm just really curious as to what people think. Dean, thank you. I think that's very useful information that you shared there. I saw a report from McKinsey this week that said 1 in 4 women are looking to either leave or downgrade their careers because of the pandemic and all the extra workload that they often seem to end up taking on. And it made me wonder, like, from a health and safety perspective, like, I wonder, is there something that, I mean, personally, I don't have kids, so I'm not in that situation, but I know of people who are like, you know, like my assistant has got 3 kids, had like, you know, a lot of challenges when they were off school and things like that. So I can, you know, empathize a lot. And I do think there is a responsibility for women to communicate with their partners where they have them about sharing the workload and things. But I just wonder, is there something that this isn't being talked about, I don't think, from a health and safety point of view, because of the whole stress around it and you know what's going to happen for companies and losing all this talent and the impact on their lives as well if they really want to be working and get a lot of, you know, personal value from doing that. So yeah, just any thoughts from you or anyone else on this?
Personally, I would say that it is good for people in business to be open and honest about the stresses that they are experiencing themselves. And sometimes if you want to, if you detect that somebody else is experiencing stress, although they don't want to actually talk about it, one way of encouraging somebody else to talk about their own stress is to tell people about your stress, and not to just be permanently on project and just be telling people about your experiences. The minute you share an experience that has affected you, it can cause other people to open up and share with you what they're experiencing. And the minute you just get that connection where you can resonate with what they're saying, you've kind of got a little bit of a glint into what the potential is that causes people to be a little bit more reserved, and it affects their personality and then it affects their sleep pattern, and then it affects their working life pattern and the family. And people get the stress from not feeling as though they're comfortable in communicating. So being close to your team is important. Being open and honest with each other is another thing. Sharing the workload is a brilliant way of doing it, by saying, how can we do this? Not how can you do it or how can I do it? It's how do we do this? And knowing what the workload is, you can kind of like put it on a screen and say, I'll do this bit. Which ones do you want to take? That's not giving them an option of saying, do you not want to do it? Or do you want to do it?
I'm talking more about the home workload in terms of housekeeping, childcare, you know, those running errands, that kind of thing. So it is very much like what's going on in their personal life. So, I mean, yes, I definitely think you're right in terms of if managers can share some stories, even if it doesn't personally apply to them, then that might open up that conversation, I guess. But yeah,
their working day may very much differ from normally being an 8 o'clock start to a 10 o'clock. And it's quite regular that I'm getting emails now from people at 10 o'clock at night saying, sorry, I've just caught this, because I realise that they've got family commitments. Has anybody else got any experience where they've had to work any later than what would have been normal?
I've obviously just recently set up, Dean, as you know, and it's been a challenge because we've got a newborn in the family as well. Say newborn, she's won this month. I mean, it's just floor. But it's become a challenge for me from various angles, really, in terms of mental health, as well as kind of being conscious that you're around family all the time, managing that time correctly so that you've got that balance. And I have found that I've ended up working longer hours, but having that time with Isla during the day. It's a very different experience for me because I have worked for other people previously in another role and haven't had that flexibility. So it's an interesting one. I certainly do. The thing for me with lone working is that it's certainly become a lonely environment to work in. And it's important for me to bounce off other people like we've got on this group today. But I suppose everyone's different and everyone's circumstances are different. And I think that's what you're trying to get across, is that everyone's lone environment is completely different to the others. So for me personally, I think that the way that I've dealt with the whole being in that home environment is to get out as much as I can. So I'm working outside of the home environment today. And that certainly helps with the mental health as well, because you're not always in that one environment. So, but it is
changing your working location
to each individual.
Okay, that's great. Right, Leo, you got a question?
Yeah, I actually, I'm a qualified mental health first aid trainer, and I think a lot of businesses and organisations, they don't sort of like share the fact that this there to support people. There's a big stigma still with mental health. I'm not saying all businesses do this, but I worked for a children's charity before I set up on my own in March, and even there they've got counsellors working there, but it's not promoted enough. I was a mental health first aider and then I've gone on to the instructor, but it's just not. And so I think promoting that and pushing it to employees, to other people that, look, we're here to talk to you, we have a counselling service, we have this, and actually letting people know, and even more so. I mean, I set up in March on my own, and it's been stressful anyway, but I've suffered. I mean, I suffer from PTSD anyway, which is a big reason. I was I'm an ex-police officer, so I've got to be mindful of it, and I've got to know about what. But with having nobody now, been working for myself, no colleagues, it's really difficult to sort of like, and it's knowing how to manage it. So if you are working for somebody, or you are a boss or a manager, I think promoting it and showing people that, we do care, and read up on it, because I don't think people are aware enough of the mental health side of things. Which is, that's why I want to get out there and deliver it to people. But it really is it's going to be a massive issue, and I think it's going to get worse as things go on, because it's going to go on and on this. Yeah. People are going to be working from home, and people want that contact. They need that contact. But if you do know, ask directly as well. If you know that somebody's not performing as they are, if they're not sort of, be completely direct with them and say, look, you don't see yourself, are you okay? And tell them what support's in place for them, because especially now it's going to get more difficult. So I think just being completely direct with people is the way forward. Yeah. And I'm really passionate about it, so I don't want to go on and on, but that's my snippet.
No, thank you, Lee. You've just actually prompted me into another area that, like, occupational health surveys can be done with employees as well. So a previous instance has just come to my mind that has happened in a client's business, that somebody had diabetes, and they had an issue that cropped up one day, and the staff didn't know how to deal with it. We said, you never said that you were a diabetes. And the individual said, you never asked. So this can be an issue where if we don't ask the question, they will never give us the answer voluntarily, although they should do in ethically and morally, we should do. But if we don't ask the questions, they may never feel compelled to give us the answer. This doesn't say that they will always say that I suffer with panic attacks or I suffer with depression or PTSD. He may not give that information, but at least we can ask the question, be as open and honest.
The problem is that stigma. The stigma's still there. As much as you see it on telly, you see it everywhere, but that stigma's still there. And if you suffer from it and you're that person, and especially if you're on your own, you're going to be very unlikely to just come out with it or tell anybody. You know, even people don't even tell their own partners. And we obviously suicide, that's, you know, again, be very direct. If you feel that somebody's on that slippery slope, you should always just be direct. Look, have you considered suicide? Is it something that you're thinking about? Because if you are, we need to support you. And 9 times out of 10, if you ask that question, they will say, well, actually, I have. And it's funny, it's not funny, but it's really strange how that actually, you know, if they're asked directly, they will, people who are in that mindset, because they don't, you know, it's the last thing anybody wants to do, but it's just being direct with people and sort of like making sure that they're asked. And I think we're going to have massive problems everywhere with the mental health side of things now.
Yeah, and everybody's got mental health and just got different ranges of it, haven't we? Really. Thanks, Leo. Appreciate that.
Dean, can I just come back to Una's point, because I'm just conscious that 3 blokes answered the question about is perhaps the female perspective different. So I'd love to hear from someone perhaps more qualified in our audience to pick up on Una's point.
I understand what Una's saying, but my lads are grown up, but I fully understand what Una's saying. It's the massive responsibility. You're working from home and everything else is going around you as well. And I don't have a partner either, but it's speaking to your partner, I would say, Una, is it, you know, to say you've got to help. I'm a woman, but the job of looking after the kids isn't all mine. I'm working from home here. I am working. You just mean this is my working day. I'm not off. Yeah, the kids are here, we've got to share it, because obviously I think most kids have gone back to school, but moving forward I think there's still going to be some issues, isn't there?
Anita, I'll back you up there. My wife is a psychotherapist and she works in the NHS in a prison, so she's worked all the way through. So we've got 3 children who are 6 or 7, 7 and 8, and a 1-year-old, and I've had to really up my game as such, you know, because it's, you know, you don't, as a guy, you don't, well, you do, but it's, I'm not saying I'm lazy, but I really have had to, you know, I take them to school in the morning, I get them home, I make the tea, and I've been really mad because my wife's stressed, she's actually going to work and she's got the, so yeah, and I find that really hard, you know, doing my work and everything else around the kids, because I am practically most days doing it all. And then when my wife does work from home, the baby's generally around, so I'll say, right, I'll have him during the morning. And it is a case of just speaking to your partner if you're in that position, and sort of like you've got to take that load between you both, because otherwise it'll, you know, it's again, it's not going to be good for mental health and relationship really. But yeah, anyway, I've talked enough.
Unusual time.
It is.
I find the harder kids don't get it. Like my 18-year-old or 21, they see dad on the sofa on his laptop, they assume he's on Netflix, or it's fine. I can talk to dad. I don't. This is fine, you know. And I'm like, no, sorry, I'm just doing something. You can't just come and start chatting to me. I find
you
that
need a hat with a sign on it saying "I'm working."
Yeah. I don't know. The other place that I work, they've been really good at facilitating people's home arrangements, so people have been allowed to pick and choose almost what days they work, or whether they work from home, or whether they work in the office based on what their home life is. I have seen that create some resentment though amongst other people. So that, you know, there are people that are working in the office that they look at what the other person is doing and they think somehow they've got a cushier number. I don't know whether anyone's got experience of that, and you know, almost like there's been a bit of furlough resentment from the unfurloughed staff, and then the same in reverse, and what dynamic that creates when the workplace finally reunites is, I think, going to be interesting to see. I don't know whether anyone's got any views on that. Dean?
I think we've had that previously as well, even when we were all at work. We used to have it when we used to sit there as non-smokers and always moan about the smokers. Like, they're taking another hour's worth of breaks a day just because I don't smoke. So when do I get those breaks? And I think it's always happened. And some people will always be distracted by things that have nothing to do with them, but are just being nosy anyway. But it's just human. It's just the human way of just it being interested in other things that are going on. Some people just get their heads down, get on with the work, and work from 9 till 5, and don't take the head up from the computer. Fair and balance, yeah, I'm all for it. But sometimes there's certain things that are fair for some people, which, like having children and 3 children, crikey, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I take my hat off to everybody that has got children or having to cater from people and these small human beings waking up at 6 in the morning and not wanting to go to bed at 8 and 9 o'clock, because it's a full-time job being a parent. So now you're trying to mix in home life and business life in an environment which your children it's home. It's not work, it's home. So when you're there, you're at home. That's why you get disturbed. But you've not really got many possibilities of going elsewhere.
Well,
it's a difficult one from my position.
Fair doesn't mean the same, certainly. I agree with that. I've said that many times. Tim, it cracks me up that on screen you're O'Donnell. You sound like some sort of Irish folk singer. You were looking to come in there.
Yeah, I was. Well, I'm not a folk singer, and you wouldn't want me to start singing. I can guarantee that you would all leave very quickly. But I think that there will be a seismic shift in the social perception about home working in a year or so's time, because I think that prior to the initial lockdown, if you were to say to a colleague, yes, I'm a home worker, they would picture you sat in bed in the morning with a cup of tea in your pajamas with a laptop on the duvet, logging on just enough to keep the mouse moving and watching daytime television. Well, in fact, of course, I would suggest that everybody here would have a different perception of that. And we talked about it yesterday with a few of you about how different it is when you're by yourself. And Una, especially, I used to work from home when I was a newly divorced man. And the hours that I worked as a home worker were considerably more than they were when I was in an office-based person, because there were no social cues for leaving or going for lunch. You didn't have somebody saying, "Oh, good night, Tim," and standing up and putting their coat on. You're thinking, "Oh, Christ, is that time?" You would just carry on and say, I'll just finish this, I'll just finish that. And then conversely, of course, what Una, I think, was trying to get across is, are there any sort of health and safety implications associated with an employee's responsibility for fulfilling a full day's work at home, and also managing the responsibilities, full-time responsibilities of a parent managing the home as well? And that's a really difficult one, and that links very nicely into what Dean was saying about communication and keeping those lines of communication open. So I think that is probably my view.
Thanks, Tim.
Can I just say a quick word about the isolation? I think that's a really key point, Dean. Simon messaged me yesterday, and we just message on Teams because we're both busy doing our own thing. But he said, "Have you got time for a quick chat? I'm conscious we've not spoken this week." And I was in around grabbing me when he texted me. So after the phone call, because I'm just, you're just working and getting on with your work. After the phone call, I felt miles better. So thank you, Simon, for that. But it does make a big difference to have that interaction, that proper face-to-face interaction, not just messaging. I think that's a really good point.
One thing I've just got from that as well, the fact that you've just said to Simon, thank you for doing that. Simon feels great that he's made you feel better. I feel better that Simon's done that as well. So for you to say that, I mean, it's great. It's good that you haven't had to resort to the first aid kit on the wall behind you. But Simon...
I really did yesterday.
So it might have only taken 5 minutes. But if you can take 5 minutes in a day to phone up somebody you've not spoken to in a little bit of time, not for anything else other than to say, how are you doing? Not spoke to you in a while, just checking in on you. It goes a long way and it gets remembered. You'll probably all, just as a little last minute thing now, you'll probably all remember a teacher from school who's probably made you feel good, that you loved as a teacher. And we never ever said thank you to that teacher. You can be that person now that somebody can phone up in at the end of all this and say, thanks for helping me through it.
I do keep a close eye on those bottles behind Debbie, though. The number decreases and then gets bigger again. She's got wide and varied tastes. And we are putting in a special home working arrangement for Debbie starting next week when a new puppy arrives. So, so we're being very flexible, or we're trying to be. Right, any last points before we wrap this up? Dawn, hi.
Yeah, it's been very interesting listening to this. Thanks, Dean, for your presentation. Really enjoyed that. I run a networking group for women, and I started networking myself because I, working from home, started feeling exactly how all these home workers are feeling today, feeling isolated, feeling alone, no one to talk to. It started affecting my confidence. As soon as I started networking and meeting new people, it was amazing how much more uplifted I felt. So I would say anybody out there, if you are working for yourself, there are so many networking groups about. There's bound to be one that suits you. I'm not just doing a plug for myself here, but even though it's not the same as meeting face to face, just meeting new contacts on these Zoom calls, that you can then do what happened between Debbie and Simon yesterday, is have a chat with somebody new and just, how are you feeling today? It really does help.
Thanks, Dawn. Any last comments or wrap up? Okay, great. Right, well, I'll put, or I say Debbie will put all the contact details in the follow-up email as she always does. Thank you, Tim. Thank you to Intersolia as well. Tim's new album is out on the 1st of November, just in time for Christmas. Classic Irish folk songs. Not really. Thank you to Dean. You've certainly given. I'm gonna get myself. I've got upstairs. I've got a USB keyboard up in the loft, which I'm gonna get down today, and I'm gonna work on just my posture, because I'm spending an awful lot of time at this laptop, and I can feel my back sometimes. The other thing I can recommend, which is another bad habit from lockdown, is going on eBay. These have just been delivered, and buying classic vinyl. This is. It's not really working, is it? You can't really see. Maybe there you go. There you go. You can see that. That's Billy Joel's live album from 1977, I think, on vinyl. And that's my job this evening. So do distract yourself when working from home by buying classic vinyl. I can definitely advocate that. The quick reminder: the Gordon Brown event is free for members to attend, and it's going to be fascinating, I think, just to hear from the horse's mouth his views on what's going on in the economy. That's available on our website. Also, the transport event for any business considering diversifying. It may be that there's billions of pounds being thrown at rail infrastructure over the coming decades. If your business can get a part of that, then it's well worth perhaps looking into that. So all the details at chamberlive.co.uk. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you again, Dean and Tim, and enjoy the rest of Wednesday.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this Chamber Live video from the East Lancashire Chamber of Commerce. If you've enjoyed this content, then you might enjoy some of the other content that's on the screen now. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel.